The horror story of passion called Jennifer tells the terrifying tale of a young man who falls in love with a woman who appears one day at his workplace. It seemed like a simple story of passion and terror. What could possibly go wrong? Or could it? That day was eventful. There were a few accidents, some burned victims, and only 2 natural deaths. After spending so much time in this job, I began to see the bodies as if they were animals. I would cut and open them up like a butcher. I feel like I slowly lost my sanity. The smell no longer bothered me, but in the beginning, my stomach would churn and I would feel nauseous every day. Out of all the workdays, I only remember one where I actually vomited my guts out. It was an elderly woman, probably between 60 to 70 years old. I don't remember it very well. She had died in the bathtub, living alone. Her body was only discovered a month later. She lay there, with that murky brown water surrounding her. Larvae and worms were swimming and feasting on the putrid water where the old woman's body was decomposing. Through the window, all sorts of insects entered to devour the carcass. Every gentle touch on the body to examine it caused the flesh to separate from the bones. Her skin slid and detached from the muscles easily. The smell was terrible, making even the most experienced professional stagger. I simply returned what I had eaten. It was the worst day of my job, but today, fortunately, was a good day. One of the natural deaths that day was the beautiful Jennifer. Beautiful like an angel. She appeared to be around 18 years old. Her body was intact, without any marks. If it weren't for the paleness, one could think she was merely sleeping. Her countenance enchanted me. If she were still alive, we could have had a love affair. I can't see a beautiful woman without imagining an entire life with her, because I have always dreamed of having a girlfriend, but I have never been successful. I have never had the patience for women. Perhaps that's why this girl captivated me so much. A young, beautiful woman, covered by a white sheet and completely naked. If only her body still radiated warmth, I could run my fingers along her beautiful body, feel her curves and contours, feel what it's like to be with a woman. But then I remembered that she is dead, her heart having stopped beating due to a heart attack. This body sculpted by God will be buried and decompose. Unfortunately, worms do not differentiate between beautiful and young girls and old, fat ones. Everyone has left. When I realized it, I was alone standing in a cold room full of corpses. I went to the door and looked down the hallway, only to see the guard sitting and talking to a nearby resident. Luckily, he was afraid of the corpses and never entered the building unless called. I locked the door and started to prepare all the bodies. I took the stretcher of beautiful Jennifer and placed it right in the center of the room. Like a child unwrapping a present, I slowly pulled back the corner of the sheet that covered her and admired every inch that was revealed to me. She was even more beautiful than I could have imagined. I removed my glove and placed my hand on her stomach. It was cold. I ran my hand along her body to her breast. Among all the aberrations that have appeared here, she is a relief for my eyes. We could have dated. I could have caressed her beautiful breast while it was still warm. But with my strange and reclusive behavior, she would never come near me. I was in love, yes, in love as I always am when I see such a beautiful girl. Normally, I am rejected, but what could Jennifer do now? I remembered again that she was dead and cold. I put on the glove and sat in a chair next to her. I couldn't let them bury her. Her body would be lost in the ground. All her beauty would be undone by worms and bacteria. She could have been the mother of my children. I had to carry her with me. Her body had to continue. It had to remain warm and alive within me. Therefore, I took a scalpel and approached her. It was sacrilege to cut such a beautiful body, but we needed to examine her heart. I made a precise incision on her chest, broke the ribs, and cut out the heart. I opened it in half, took a piece, and sewed it back together. I closed her body. Suddenly, I realized the atrocity I had committed in ruining the wonderful work of nature. I felt as if I had killed her in that moment. I stored the body and took the piece I had taken from her heart, carefully placing it in a small glass jar filled with preserving liquid. I stared at the jar, my mind filled with a mix of awe and regret. What had I done? I had defiled her body, desecrated her beauty. I had become a monster, driven by an unhealthy obsession. But at the same time, I couldn't deny the thrill that coursed through my veins. I had her heart, a piece of her essence, a symbol of my love for her. I carefully hid the jar in a secret compartment in my apartment, locking it away from prying eyes. I couldn't risk anyone discovering my terrible secret. As days turned into weeks, my obsession with Jennifer grew. I would spend hours gazing at her photograph, the one I had managed to obtain from the morgue. Her image haunted my dreams, and I could no longer differentiate between reality and fantasy. I would imagine conversations with her, holding her hand, feeling her warmth against my skin, but the truth remained: she was gone, and I was left with nothing but a stolen piece of her heart. As time went on, I noticed changes within myself. I became more withdrawn, losing interest in the outside world. My interactions with others became strained, as I could no longer relate to their trivialities. My sole focus was on Jennifer, on the love we could have had if only she had been alive. But my twisted desires didn't stop there. I began to collect other body parts, stealing bits and pieces from the corpses that crossed my path. Fingers, toes, even an eye. Each body part became a token of my twisted love, a reminder of the beauty that death had stolen from me. My apartment became a macabre shrine, filled with jars and containers filled with these gruesome treasures. I would spend hours arranging them, admiring their grotesque beauty. My mind had become a twisted labyrinth where reality and delusion intertwined. But the darkness within me was not satisfied. It hungered for more. It craved the ultimate possession, the ultimate symbol of my love for Jennifer. I knew what I had to do, the only way to fulfill my morbid desires. One night, under the cover of darkness, I made my way to the cemetery. I searched for her grave, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The moon cast an eerie glow on the tombstones as I finally found her resting place. With trembling hands, I dug into the cold earth, sweat dripping down my brow. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, igniting a macabre thrill within me. Finally, I unearthed her coffin, the wood creaking under the weight of my anticipation. I opened the lid, revealing her lifeless body. It had begun to decompose, but to me, she was still the epitome of beauty. I carefully removed the stitches, exposing her chest once again. With the scalpel in my hand, I made a precise incision, just like before. This time, however, I didn't stop at taking a piece of her heart. I took it all. I removed her heart from her chest, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and sorrow. I had what I had always desired, the ultimate symbol of our love. But as I held her heart in my hands, a sense of emptiness washed over me. I had crossed a line I could never return from. I had become a monster consumed by his own desires. The realization hit me like a freight train, and I dropped the heart back into the coffin. I quickly closed the lid and reburied the coffin, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I couldn't continue down this dark path. I needed to confront the darkness within me, seek help, and find a way to overcome my twisted obsession. The horror of my actions would forever haunt me, a reminder of the depths one can sink when consumed by a passion turned monstrous. I had lost myself in a love that was never meant to be, and now I had to find a way to pick up the shattered pieces of my sanity and rebuild my life.